Hello and welcome to a special Devil's Advocate. As controversy over the forthcoming Foreign Secretary level Indo-Pakistan talks grows, we present a debate between the two opposed sides. Speaking in support of the talks, former Government Minister Manishankar Aiyar, and arguing against them, former Foreign Secretary Kanwal. Manishankar Aiyar, for 14 months since 26/11, India has maintained that talks with Pakistan cannot take place unless the infrastructure of terror is in fact dismantled and unless the Bombay accused are brought to justice. Clearly, neither of those have happened. So how do you explain the government's U-turn?
It's not my business to explain the U-turn. I'm simply glad it's taken place. I do think it is necessary to talk to Pakistan.
So you accept that there is a U-turn here?
Why wouldn't you?
Then let me pursue that by saying this to you. In July on the 17th, after Sharm el-Sheikh, the Prime Minister promised Parliament that he would not do anything to de-link terror from the dialogue process. Now, by pursuing the talks despite the Pune bomb, that's precisely what he's done. He's broken his own promise to Parliament.
I don't agree with you. Among the things that we're going to talk about, indeed the priority that we will be giving to the subject is indeed terror. And without dialogue with Pakistan, I don't see how we can cooperatively tackle the problem of terror emanating from Pakistani soil, both against ourselves and against them.
But the Pakistanis continue to perpetrate terror upon us. We believe that they're responsible for Pune, and that hasn't put us off talking. Rather than punish them, we seem to be rewarding them with talks.
I think it's not our business to be punishing them, and I don't think we'll succeed. And B, I don't think there's any reward given to Pakistan in doing something which is in our national self-interest.
Kanwal, let me put the opposite viewpoint to you. It's equally clear that for 14 months, the policy of not talking to Pakistan hasn't delivered on terror at all. Today, that policy is considered counterproductive both at home and internationally. Hasn't the time come for India to accept reality and change tracks?
But what reality? The reality we should accept is that Pakistan is not going to change. Pakistan will use terror as an instrument of state policy, which Prime Minister said just a couple of months ago.
No, the reality that you're accepting is that by refusing to talk, you haven't got Pakistan to cooperate on terror. Now what you must try is to encourage them by talking.
But they won't be encouraged.
How do you know?
Because they consider terror as an instrument of state policy against India. They want to use terrorism as an instrument of pressure. They want to do both things. Bring you into talks, but to make sure that you are continually pressed to make concessions of the kind they want, to have periodic terrorist attacks against you, to send a signal to you that this pressure is not going to be given up. And therefore you must accept the reality of this pressure and tailor your policy accordingly.
He's suggesting, Manishankar Aiyar, that Pakistan has actually set a trap that we've walked into.
Rubbish.
Just that? Rubbish? Nothing more?
It's rubbish because why should we walk into any trap? Don't we have the self-confidence to talk to Pakistan without being caught in a trap? What kind of pressure can they apply to us? Firstly, I'm not at all convinced that terrorism is a matter of state policy in Pakistan. I think there are segments of Pakistani society and the establishment that would like to do so, but there's a huge segment of Pakistani opinion, both in the public, in the media, as well as in the establishment, who do not believe that terrorism should be a matter of state policy for Pakistan.
Are you guilty of identifying a small extremist hardline minority in Pakistan with the majority of Pakistani sentiment? Are you mistakenly assuming that that minority controls the shots rather than realizing that that majority is supportive of good relations and we should encourage them?
If this minority is the ISI, if this minority is General Kiani and the armed forces and the corps commanders, and if this minority also contains key people in the establishment, both in the civilian government and in the bureaucracy, then I ask you, what do you mean by a minority? These are the people who are controlling policy in Pakistan. I agree that there are segments of the public and of the media and others who would like normalization of relations with India. Now, if they had that power to bring about a change in Pakistan policy, I would say by all means.
All right, we have a clear dispute with you over that. Let's come now to a second issue, which perhaps is as important. The opposition, Manishankar Aiyar, has claimed that the Prime Minister is talking under pressure, or as Mr. Advani put it, a nudge from America. Let me put the facts to you. Just 14 days before India proposed dialogue with Pakistan, the Foreign Secretary told this very program that there was no question of talking to Pakistan unless Pakistan did more. Days later, the Indian Foreign Minister actually publicly in London called upon Pakistan to introspect. What's changed other than a nudge from America?
I don't think nudges from America are going to determine the stand of a sovereign, independent India in respect of its single most important foreign policy issue. I think the Prime Minister has been trying to find space for a very long time now to resume talking to Pakistan, if not resume the composite dialogue.
Then why were these discordant noises, if not contradictory ones, being made by the Foreign Secretary and the Foreign Minister just days before?
But they're not contradictory at that time. There has been a definite change in position, and I'm glad there's been this change of position. It's in our interest to change the position.
Let me put it like this. Even if it looks as if India has been buckling under pressure, the truth is that fast-moving developments in Afghanistan, as well as the change in balance between civilian politicians and the military in Pakistan, requires that India thinks seriously about how its national interest now needs to be protected. And in that light, talking to Pakistan is a credible, sensible, justified first step.
Yes, but you are talking from a position of weakness much more than before, precisely for the reasons that you are spelling out.
But that weakness is a result of the fact you haven't talked for so long. So now it's better you talk now rather than get weaker.
Even if you talk to them, that's not going to change their policy at all. In Afghanistan, they're going to try and exclude you as much as possible, and they have made their assistance to the United States to help in a dialogue with the Taliban contingent upon limiting India's presence in Afghanistan. And General Kiani has said it publicly at Brussels at a NATO meeting.
Can I interrupt and put this to you? In these circumstances, even if for argument's sake I accept that what you're saying is correct, is it better not to talk than to try and talk and change the situation?
But talking will not lead you anywhere.
How can you know that? How can you know that?
We've seen it already. We've seen it in May.
You can't say
We've
this
seen
from a
it in May in
position.
We've seen it in May in Ekaterinburg when they released Hafiz Saeed. We've seen it in Sharm el-Sheikh when days before they withdrew all cases.
They didn't release Hafiz Saeed. The court released Hafiz Saeed. That could happen in India as well.
We know what the game plan is. After we offered them foreign secretary level talks, they had on February 5 this huge rally on Kashmir Solidarity
Not
Day.
after, it happened on the same day. And by the way, Kashmir Day is something that happens every time in Pakistan.
I was being told by government, not just me, I was told by government the day when the approach to Pakistan was made, and what happened on the Kashmir Solidarity Day as well after that.
All right,
there is a gap, but they didn't pay any heed to the gesture made by India.
I'm going to point out for the sake of the audience that that's your interpretation. For the record, I want to confirm that, in fact, the offer was made on the 28th of January. It was made public on the 5th of February, which is the day when this coincidence you're talking about happened. A second problem, Manishankar Aiyar, is that as early or as recently as November, the Prime Minister publicly said, I don't know who to deal with in Pakistan. What's changed for him to suddenly believe he knows who his interlocutor should be?
Well, my own reaction when I read that statement was that we should deal with whoever is there in Pakistan. Not to talk to Pakistan is to go nowhere. To talk to Pakistan may lead us somewhere, but we are never going to achieve anything if we do not talk to them.
But you're talking to Pakistan at a time when Asif Zardari is possibly at his weakest. He's now suffering additionally because of his dispute with the Supreme Court over the appointment of judges. His differences with Gilani are growing. His differences with Nawaz Sharif have grown. And the rift that is apparent between the civilians and the army is perhaps greater than ever. Surely this is the worst time.
There is nothing that we can do about strengthening or weakening the internal situation of a Pakistan government. We talk to whoever is there and try and keep them to their word. We've talked to Pakistan when they had a very, very strong leader in Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Didn't he betray us after that? It doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk. And to talk to somebody doesn't mean to talk from a position of weakness.
Let me put the opposite to you. It may not be clear who calls the shots in Pakistan, but surely it's in India's interest to strengthen the hand of those who support good relations with India. And clearly, the policy of not talking had brought forth resentment, if not anger, from these people. It's important for us to get them back on our side, because that's a constituency that works for good relations with us.
Let me point out a simple fact to you. Lately, we've had a lot of delegations from Pakistan coming here and saying that we are deeply anguished at what is happening within Pakistan. By not talking to the Pakistani side, you are actually isolating us and you are marginalizing us. So please, for our sake, talk to Pakistan. When Prime Minister made this, or when we made this announcement of Foreign Secretary level talks, who is it in that community, civil society, who has supported these talks, who've come out to strengthen PM's hand. On the contrary, they're all applauding General Kiani's great
forgive
success.
me, you're wrong. You're wrong. I have to correct you. There are many people in Pakistan who've supported the idea of talks. They just wish it had been composite dialogue, which they want.
Exactly.
So,
this is the line of the government,
but obviously,
of the armed forces.
Just as Pakistan wants the type of talks they want, we want the type of talks we want. That's not a contradiction.
No, there is a very serious point there. Because in the composite dialogue, the foreign secretaries only discuss peace and security in Jammu and Kashmir, not terror. Terror is only discussed at the Home Secretary level. It is relegated to a secondary position. That's the reason they're insisting on a composite dialogue.
I'm not sure that's completely correct, but let's take a break and let's come back and ask ourselves that critical question. What is the nature of talks that we're having? Is there such a sharp difference between the Indian position and the Pakistani that these talks on the 25th are predestined to failure if they start? That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to a special Devil's Advocate debate on the forthcoming India-Pakistan talks. Manishankar Aiyar, the third and perhaps the most important level of confusion is that India has said this is not a composite dialogue, but on the other hand, India has also said that these are going to be open-ended talks and Pakistan is free to bring up any issue it wants. Now, I put it to you, is that just semantic hair-splitting, or does India lack the courage of its conviction to talk?
It's a single day's talks. It's been described officially as talks for talks. We are saying you bring up whatever you want, we'll bring up whatever we want. As far as we are concerned, the issue of terror is going to be brought up. And furthermore, merely because the Home Secretary is not going to be there, the Foreign Secretary is going to be there, it doesn't mean that we cannot state whatever we have to state on terror with all the strength at our command. I say, let us not be like a frightened housewife putting up bars on a window. Let us, with the self-confidence of a truly big nation, talk to our smaller neighbor. That's all that's happening. We're talking to the Foreign Secretary for one day. And for God's sake, why are you making such a big shindig about it?
You're scared, Kanwal Sibal, that the government is somehow endangering India's core interests. But if you look at the explanation the government has given for talks, that these are exploratory talks and that whatever happens thereafter, and more importantly, whether it actually leads to a composite dialogue, depends critically on how Pakistan responds to India's concerns. What's wrong with that explanation?
But for 4 years, we have tried to test Pakistan's sincerity in dealing with terrorism.
But surely you're not saying we should give up testing Pakistan
forever. And we've come
up
with nothing. How many years do you want to test this? You've had lots of blasts in India. You've had your embassy in Kabul blown up twice. You had Pune. Now, how many times do you want to test Pakistan's sincerity? Please be firm.
Let me stop you and put that key issue. He says that what underlies these talks is the need or the desire to test Pakistan one more time. He's arguing that history proves that each time you test Pakistan, they prove wanting. Are we putting hope ahead of reality in wanting to test them once again?
I think it's a completely wrong approach to insist on trust before talks, because I believe that it is talks that will create the trust. And it is absolutely true that there are acts of terrorism. It is absolutely true that sections of the Pakistan establishment are involved in those acts of terrorism. But I do not think we will be able to stop anything happening against us by not talking to them. The point here is, do we talk or don't we talk? If you don't talk, you won't get anywhere. If you do talk, you may get somewhere.
And let me put to you one reason why talking actually is a sensible thing to do. Pakistan has just shown that by arresting Maulana Baradar, the #2 man in Taliban, they are beginning to cooperate with the Americans. Since then, 2 of the shadow governors of the Taliban, both Abdul Salam and Mullah Muhammad, have also been arrested. And now possibly even Muhammad Haqqani has been targeted with Pakistani cooperation. If they can begin to in fact change their policy vis-a-vis the Afghan Taliban, there is reason to believe, test them, they may also change their policy vis-a-vis LET. So what's wrong in that test?
What pressure would you bring? Are you going to give $3.5 billion of military aid to Pakistan? $10 billion of economic aid to Pakistan? Are you going to launch drone attacks into Pakistan territory? Are you going to threaten them?
Can I interrupt?
That if they don't behave, America will do the job itself?
Are you suggesting that it's bribes that has changed Pakistan's position vis-a-vis the Afghan Taliban, and therefore only bribes will succeed with the LET?
Bribes. Reality of military pressure, reality of military strength, reality of determination, and reality of sanctions.
All right, gentlemen. The talks, it seems, are going to happen. Let's switch in the remaining brief time left to us to actually talk about what's going to happen at those talks. India says that terror is going to be the principal subject. What, from your standpoint, Manishankar Aiyar, would be a satisfactory response from Islamabad?
From my point of view, a satisfactory opening by India would be talks about talks to make these talks uninterrupted and uninterruptible. Because if we have these sporadic talks, nothing is going to come out of it. It has to be a continuous, persistent effort. I hope our Foreign Secretary will work in that direction.
Well, talks about talks there may be or not, I don't know. But the subject of terror will come up. So let me bring you back to that. What would you consider a satisfactory response from Pakistan when Pune and Bombay are brought up?
I don't expect a satisfactory answer from Pakistan in one go. I want us to start a process where, over a period of time, we will be able to achieve a goal. And I do not think that American tactics of bribing and pressurizing with military pressure is true diplomacy. Diplomacy consists of believing that there is some good in the other side, and you appeal to that good.
He's honest enough to say that he doesn't expect a satisfactory response from Pakistan at one go. If your first response that you hear is in fact disappointing, what do you think the Indian government should do?
It will be disappointing.
So what should they do?
They will raise Samjhauta, they'll raise Balochistan, they're already saying
so
that.
So then in those circumstances, what should India do?
They will raise Kashmir, they'll raise water issues.
No, but forgive me, I'm interrupting you. If the response on the critical issue of terror is disappointing, what should India do?
That is why I feel that we have not sufficiently thought through this initiative at this point in time.
But
because
I'm asking
Pakistan is going to come up with this.
Kamal Sibal, I'm asking a different question. If you're correct and the response is disappointing on terror, which is the critical subject for India, what should the Indian government do?
I think they have no choice but to continue talking, because then we will look even more foolish.
So you mean we're locked into a process we can't get out of?
Exactly. Not in the short time frame. You can't, unless there's another major terrorist attack, and it is impossible then, because of public opinion and reaction, for government to continue. Otherwise, having taken this step, we would look very foolish if after the first round of talks we step back, because then the public will say, well, what happened? Did you think through this?
So
did you know that terrorist attacks
you're saying something else? Then you're saying that these talks, once they start, won't be a one-off, and we're locking ourselves into a logic and a momentum that we can't manage.
I think so.
I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted, except that I think you're completely wrong in saying locking ourselves in. We're doing a sensible, intelligent thing in the interests of India.
It wasn't me. I was simply interpreting what Kamal Sibal said. The second key issue is Kashmir.
Yeah.
Pakistan is bound to bring it up. And secondly,
we've got answers. We've got answers to anything that Pakistan brings up. Why are you frightened of them bringing it up? Don't you have the confidence that you've got answers to them? We've been answering on Kashmir, and we've been forcing them to give answers on Kashmir for 60 years now.
Can I interrupt?
We've made huge progress on Kashmir.
Can I interrupt and put this to you? If Pakistan were to bring up, as inevitably they will, that the terror India faces will only abate when there's a solution to the Kashmir dispute, a position that we don't accept, how do we reply?
Then I'll tell them what I told Kanwal, rubbish. I'm going to tell them exactly what we should be taking on this. Why do you think that because the Pakistanis come up with a silly point, we cannot give an appropriate response?
Rubbish may be the answer Manishankar Aiyar thinks India should give Pakistan. Do you believe the Foreign Secretary and the Indian establishment is capable of putting that across as bluntly and as effectively?
Even if we do, they won't listen.
Yeah, and if I were Foreign Secretary,
they won't listen.
Rubbish.
Therefore, we are not going to have any meeting of minds. So we can continue talking at cross purposes with each other with no result. This is the whole problem we've had with Pakistan for so many years, for so many decades.
We have literally 30 seconds. I want a last-minute verdict from the two of you. Are you suggesting, Kamal Sibal, that these talks are doomed to fail?
Yes.
Doomed to fail?
Yes.
Do you think there's a prospect of success?
Doomed to fail in substance.
They are doomed to fail if we do not make it the beginning of a long, persistent, uninterrupted and uninterruptible process. If we do that, they're doomed to, they're bound to succeed.
Doomed to succeed?
They're bound to succeed.
Do your colleagues have the strength to do that? In a word.
If you put me in charge, I have the strength.
Are you very pessimistic?
I'm pessimistic about the result of the talks in the short to medium term.
Gentlemen, thanks to you for coming and joining this debate and clarifying the two positions so the viewers have a clear idea of exactly what to expect or what to avoid. Bye. Good night.